The Arizona mountains in 1882 loomed like ancient guardians, their rugged peaks shrouded in a swirling mantle of autumn mist and fading sunlight, the rocky slopes descending into a valley where the wind carried the scent of pine and dust, weaving tales of survival, loss, and resilience amid the wild frontier. Thunder Pass, a remote trading post perched on the edge of this unforgiving terrain, stood weathered under a stormy sky, still clinging to the day's chill, its wooden stock pens dark with old blood, its barren yard whispering of a solitude broken only by the clamor of trade. Gideon Holt rode slowly through the red dirt stretch leading into the pass, his horse breathing heavily beneath him, each hoofstep leaving a dark, sweat-soaked print in the dust. At 43, his face was etched with the lines of a former cavalry scout and tracker, now a mule driver hauling iron, flour, and mail across canyon trails, his faded green shirt and worn suspenders a testament to years of hard travel. His shoulders bore the weight of a half-dead outlaw slung behind the saddle, tied tight with rawhide, a bounty that had taken 6 days to catch, and nearly 2 more to drag back alive after a grueling pursuit through the foothills west of Apache Gorge. He dismounted slowly at the wide steps of the town hall, the outlaw's shallow breathing a faint rhythm against the silence. Gideon tied his horse, his eyes taking in the familiar landmarks. McCready's empty blacksmith shed, the church with its leaning steeple, the dry trough outside Calhoun's saloon, unchanged since he'd arrived 5 years ago with a badge he now kept hidden inside his coat. Born near Murfreesboro, Tennessee, the second son of a farmer and a quiet woman who died early, leaving an unpatched hole in his family. He joined the war too young, left it older than he'd wanted, and taken the badge, thinking it might fix something. It hadn't. After the mess at Agua Fria, after the killing he never spoke of, he'd disappeared for half a decade. When Broken Mesa begged for help last year, sending a boy with a gunshot wound, he'd returned, owing a debt he couldn't name. Councilman Pritchard waited with 2 clean-cut traders, their vests and trimmed mustaches a mask for hands unbloodied by real work. "You got him," Pritchard said, his voice too loud for the quiet street. Gideon dropped the key to the outlaw's wrist irons into his hand. "Alive," he said flatly. "That was the condition. Alive, paid full." Pritchard smirked, nodding to the traders. "Well, Sheriff, you'll be glad to know the council decided to reward you with more than silver." He stepped aside, and a door opened. 2 women stepped out young, barefoot, wrists bound in thick hemp rope, their worn dresses stained with travel and dirt, their long black hair unbrushed, faces still and hard. They didn't look at anyone. Not at Gideon, not at each other, just forward. "They're twins," Pritchard said, as if the detail sweetened the offer. "Taken off a trader caravan near the border. Nobody claimed. We figured you might want something for the cabin company. Help, whatever suits you." Gideon's jaw tightened, barely noticeable. "We're not legally bound to keep them," Pritchard continued, voice quickening. "They're no use to us, and if we let them loose, they'll die or join raiding parties. But in your hands, it's a mercy, Sheriff." Gideon's hand moved slowly to the hunting knife at his hip. Pritchard stiffened, but Gideon didn't draw it in anger. He stepped forward, cutting the rope from the nearest woman's wrists, then the other. The ropes fell in a clump between their feet. He handed the knife back to Pritchard without a word, turned, and mounted his horse. "Wait a second," Pritchard called, but Gideon rode straight down Main Street, not looking back. The women didn't follow at first, standing still, unbound. Then, after a minute, they turned and began to walk not toward shelter, but after him, quiet steps, measured pace, not running, not asking, just following. The sun was low when Gideon reached his land. 2 miles out, a small wood-framed cabin built by hand after the war. A crooked barn, a narrow corral, and an old hand-dug well that never ran clean but hadn't run dry. He slid off his horse, led it into the stable, and unsaddled it by feel. Stepping out, he saw them, 20 yards off near the fence line, watching. He stared for a long moment, then left the barn door open, walked into his cabin, and shut the door. Half an hour passed. Then the door creaked, and Gideon emerged with a tin plate of beans. He set it on the top step and went back inside. By morning, the plate was empty. The women sitting near the barn, wrapped in old saddle blankets. They hadn't run. They hadn't spoken. Gideon stood on the porch with a mug of coffee, looking out at them. He didn't know what to make of it. He wasn't a rescuer, hadn't brought them home, didn't even know if he wanted them there, but their silent presence, waiting, told him they weren't seeking permission, just a place to stop. He turned, brewed another cup, and set out 3 mugs the next morning, saying nothing. The morning air was cooler, a pale haze over the field where wild grass clung to spring moisture. Gideon sipped his coffee, aware of their movements in the barn's soft shifts. No talking, just the quiet shuffle of blankets. He hadn't expected them to follow, hadn't offered or warned, but here they were. Isla emerged first, her hair braided, Nia behind her, wrapped in a blanket, her shoulders tense. They stopped a few feet from the porch. Gideon didn't move, didn't speak. Eventually, Ayla crouched, picked up a mug, handed the other to Nia, and they sat near the fence line, drinking slowly. The quiet wasn't uncomfortable, it just was. For 3 days, this rhythm held. Gideon left food, cornbread, stew, jerky on the steps without a word. The sisters appeared each morning, took it, and returned to the barn. On the second day, Nia gathered eggs, leaving them neatly by the pump. On the third, Ayla patched his shirt, leaving it folded on the rail. He noticed their ways, Ayla's sharp, alert gaze, Nia's gentle care with the animals hinting at a past of resilience. That night, a light rain tapped the roof. Gideon sat by the hearth, hearing their movements in the barn. Nia's fevered breathing reached him, and he grabbed a basin, rags, and willow tincture, returning to find her shivering. Ayla's quiet panic mirrored foxholes he'd known. He tended Nia, changing rags, giving water, until her breathing evened out. They rested, and by morning, the rain had stopped, Nia's color returning. Boone didn't sleep, his thoughts on Awafria's guilt, but their presence shifted something. Nia fed a lame hen. Ayla mended without asking, and he began leaving tools where they could find them. That afternoon, Ayla offered his coat, stitched tight. "Thank you," he said. She nodded, a pause heavy but not uncomfortable. That night, he sat longer on the porch, the flicker of their lantern in the barn a new rhythm. He'd come to hide, but their quiet strength was reshaping his solitude. The Arizona mountains unfurled like a rugged tapestry of icy slopes and fading shadows as Gideon Holt, Ayla, Nia, Kale, and the Apache kin ventured away from Thunder Pass, the pale dawn casting long, ghostly silhouettes across the rugged terrain. Gideon led the way on foot, his weathered coat dusted with frost, his boots crunching through the snow-dusted ground, his axe slung over his shoulder alongside his rifle. His face, rugged with a scar across his cheek, bore a mixture of determination and unease, his hazel eyes scanning the peaks for signs of the outlaws, a quiet resolve battling the weight of his past solitude. Ayla, the elder sister in her mid-20s, walked beside him, her mended dress fluttering beneath a borrowed shawl, her wrists still marked from the ropes, her dark eyes sharp with survival. Nia, the younger sister, followed, her dress patched and torn, her hands cradling Kale, the 2-year-old boy, his tattered blanket pressed against his chest, his pale face showing signs of recovery from his fever. A young Apache warrior, Tala, trailed them, his buckskin attire adorned with faded beads, his hands carrying a spear, his presence a silent guardian, flanked by 3 others from the sisters' tribe, their faces painted with earth tones, their horses laden with supplies glinting in the weak light. The journey to a hidden tribal village near Frost Hollow, a 2-day trek, was their goal, but the mountains held other trials to test their fragile alliance. Their water was scarce, the canteen they'd salvaged from Thunder Pass reduced to a few icy drops, their supplies dwindled to a strip of jerky and a handful of pine nuts Tala had foraged. The cold bit deep, its chill a relentless adversary, the silence broken only by the crunch of their boots, the soft whimper of Kale, and the distant call of an eagle soaring overhead. Gideon's mind churned with the previous day's events, his impulsive liberation of the sisters, the arrival of the Apache kin with their claim of sacred law, the threat of outlaws. He'd acted to ease his own guilt, but their presence now drew danger, a price he hadn't foreseen. He offered Ayla water, a gesture of goodwill, his hand trembling slightly from the cold. Ayla accepted, her eyes narrowing. "Why risk this for us?" she asked, her voice raw but steady. Gideon met her gaze, his scar itching under the frost. "Lost my brother to war. Can't leave you to die like that." Ayla's expression softened, but suspicion lingered. a reflection of a life shaped by captivity and survival. Tala and the warriors walked with a quiet dignity, their buckskin garments rustling softly, the woven pouch Nia carried catching the fading light. Tala shared their story as they moved, his voice low and resonant. Outlaws raided our village, stole our goods, enslaved them. Ayla and Nia fled with Kale to escape. We've tracked them since, fearing their return. Nia added, her tone firm. Our tribe cast us out. We ran to save our son. A warrior, Kono, muttered. They want our tribal secrets. Gideon's heart sank. The pouch likely held something valuable, a lure that had ruined men, but the sisters' lives and Kale's safety were worth more. I'll keep you safe, he said, his resolve firming, though doubt gnawed at him about the pouch's contents. Their progress halted at midday when they reached a trading post tucked into a narrow valley. Mountain crossing, a haven for outlaws and wanderers. Gideon needed supplies, his stores depleted after the sisters' rescue, but Ayla tensed. Danger here, she warned. Men talk. Gideon nodded, his rifle ready. Inside, the air was frigid, the stench of damp wool and stale tobacco thick. A trader named Silas Kane, a wiry man with a crooked grin, leaned against a crate, his eyes narrowing. Gideon Holt, he said, heard you freed 2 Apache sisters and a kid. Outlaws are offering a bounty. Gideon's jaw tightened, his past with mountain rumors flashing. Mind your own, Silas. Kane smirked, his gaze on the pouch. $200 says I tell them where you're headed. Nia's pouch flashed, striking Kane's arm, forcing him back. Speak, and you bleed, she hissed. Gideon stepped forward, his rifle aimed. Walk away, Silas. This ain't your fight. Kane paled, retreating, his laughter echoing. They'll hunt you down. Gideon cursed under his breath. Kane's treachery would lead the outlaws straight to Frost Hollow. We move now, he said. The tribe's respect grew, their trust a tentative thread. You're brave, Kono said. Gideon shook his head, the weight of his past pressing down. I've been a loner. The ambush came at dusk. Hoofbeats thundered through the snow, and 4 outlaws led by a scar-faced rider named Vance surrounded them near a rocky outcrop. Hand over the sisters, Holt. Vance barked, his rifle raised. Gideon fired, his shot grazing Vance's arm, sending him staggering. Ayla threw a rock, striking another's shoulder, while Tala's spear felled a third. Gideon's second shot dropped a rider, the outcrop falling silent save for the wind's moan. The 4th fled, shouting threats. They'll burn you out. They took cover behind the rocks, bandaging minor cuts, the cold seeping into their exhaustion. Tala's eyes met Gideon's, his suspicion easing. You fight for us, he said. Gideon wiped frost from his brow, his scar itching. Ain't right, what they did. I've got regrets of my own. Nia nodded, her pain surfacing. They killed my father for this pouch. Gideon's breath caught the relic was the key, a prize worth killing for. We'll keep it safe, he said, his resolve hardening. Their bond deepened as they rested, Gideon sharing his canteen, Tala offering pine nuts from his pouch. What's in that pouch? He asked. Nia held it up, its symbols glowing faintly. It holds our sacred rights. They want them to sell. Gideon's heart ached, his losses echoing theirs. We're all broken then. Maybe we heal together. The night stretched ahead, the mountains vast, but the threat of the outlaws grew. Gideon taught Ayla to use his axe, her hands steady despite her past, their partnership a lifeline. Tala showed him Apache mountain signs, their trust aflame against the mountain's grip. You're strong, Gideon said. Ayla smiled, a rare light in her eyes. You too, brother. The tribe watched, their kinship deepening, a family forged in the crucible of the mountains. But the peace was fleeting. Hoofbeats returned, closer now, Vance and his men, relentless as the frost. Gideon chose a defensible ridge, setting up with the tribe behind rocks. We fight if we must, he said, his rifle ready. Tala nodded, his spear poised. Vance's men appeared, their rifles glinting. Last chance, Holt, Vance shouted. Gideon fired, his shot dropping a rider, but an arrow grazed Tala's arm, drawing a cry. Nia shielded him, her pouch a talisman, while Kono's spear felled 2, forcing the attackers to retreat. They bandaged Tala's arm, Gideon's hands gentle. You're all my family now, he said. Tala's eyes met his, a warmth breaking through. And you're ours. The mountains tested them, their icy trials forging a bond. But the outlaws' wrath loomed larger, a storm they'd face together. Frost Hollow was near, but so was their reckoning. The Arizona mountains loomed like ancient sentinels, their rugged peaks shrouded in a swirling mantle of snow and mist, the rocky slopes descending into a frozen valley that shimmered under the pale glare of a midday sun, struggling to pierce the thick gray clouds. Gideon Holt, Ayla, Nia, Cale, and the Apache kin, led by Tala, pressed onward, the wagon creaking behind Gideon's steady hands, the weary horse plodding through the snow-dusted trail with a labored gait, its breath visible in the frigid air. Gideon's weathered coat clung to his broad frame with frost, his boots crunching through the icy ground, his axe slung over his shoulder alongside his rifle. His face, rugged with a scar across his cheek, bore a determined set, his hazel eyes scanning the peaks for signs of the outlaws, a quiet resolve battling the weight of his past solitude. Ayla, the elder sister in her mid-20s, walked beside him, her mended dress fluttering beneath a borrowed shawl, her wrists still marked from the ropes, her dark eyes sharp with survival. Nia, the younger sister, followed, her dress patched and torn, her hands cradling Cale, the 2-year-old boy, his tattered blanket pressed against his chest, his pale face showing signs of recovery from his fever. Tala trailed them, his buckskin attire adorned with faded beads, his hands carrying a spear, his presence a silent guardian, flanked by 3 Apache warriors, their faces painted with earth tones, their horses laden with supplies glinting in the weak light. The hidden tribal village near Frost Hollow, their destination, was a day's journey, but the mountains held other trials to forge their resilience. Their water was nearly frozen solid, the canteen they'd salvaged from mountain crossing reduced to a few icy slivers, their supplies dwindled to a strip of jerky and a handful of pine nuts. Tala had foraged. The cold bit deep, its chill a relentless adversary, the silence broken only by the crunch of their boots, the soft whimper of Cale, and the distant howl of a wolf echoing through the peaks. Gideon's mind wrestled with his past, his brother lost to war, his years of isolation, a guilt that shadowed his every step. The presence of Ayla, Nia, and Cale, a mirror to his loneliness, stirred a compassion he'd buried, their resilience a challenge to his despair. "We need to find shelter soon," Gideon said, his voice hoarse from the frigid air. Tala nodded, pointing to a faint shadow on the mountainside. "There's a cave ahead. It might shield us," he replied, his Apache wisdom guiding them through the wilderness. The tribe's silence, broken only by soft murmurs and the occasional rustle of supplies, hinted at their vigilance. The pouch Nia carried a burden they shared. They reached the cave as the sun weakened, its icy overhang a fleeting mercy against the biting cold. Gideon checked the wagon, its wheels frozen and creaking, while Ayla and a warrior named Kono scouted the entrance, her movements aided by the crutches he'd fashioned. The cave offered a shallow recess, its interior frigid but sheltered, a rare refuge in the mountain's grip. Gideon melted snow for water, offering it to Kono first, his hands trembling from the cold. "Drink, friend," he said, the word warm with care. Kono accepted, his eyes softening. "Thank you, Gideon," he murmured, a rare nod breaking through his stoic demeanor. The moment was brief, but it deepened their bond, a thread of trust weaving through their shared struggle. The mountain's ordeal struck at noon. A blizzard brewed on the horizon, a swirling wall of white snow that swallowed the sky, its roar a test of their endurance. "Get down," Gideon shouted, pulling Ayla, Cale, and the wagon into the cave's depths, the warriors and horse crowding in. The storm hit like a living entity, its force tearing at their clothes, snow clogging their cloaks and stinging their exposed skin. Gideon shielded Cale with his body, Ayla and Nia huddling close, the tempest raging for hours, leaving them buried in drifts, their meager supplies buried under the snow. As it passed, the mountains revealed a new peril, an outlaw trap, a snare concealed by snow, its metal jaws glinting near Ayla's crutches. Gideon reacted instantly, yanking her back, the trap snapping shut inches from her. Tala's quick thinking with his spear dislodged the mechanism, saving them. "Good save," Gideon said, his respect for them growing. Ayla nodded, her gaze steady. "The mountains test our soul," she replied. That night, they camped in the cave's lee, a small fire their only warmth, its glow casting shadows on the icy walls. The blizzard had delayed them, the village still a day away, and Gideon's mind churned with guilt, his brother's loss, his years of isolation, Now this family's fight. Kono offered him a pine nut, his hands gentle. You fight for us, he said. Why? Gideon poked the fire, his face shadowed. I turned away from help once my brother paid for it. Can't do that again. Kale's eyes, though weak, softened, his small voice whispering, Papa? A word that pierced Gideon's heart. The confession hung heavy, a mirror to Gideon's regrets. Strength ain't just in surviving, he said. It's in standing together. Nia leaned against him, her voice small. This pouch holds our rights. They want them to profit. Gideon's heart ached, his losses echoing hers. I lost my brother to war. Lived alone since. Tala's gaze met his, a warmth breaking through. We're all lost then. Maybe we find kin. Their talk was interrupted by a rustle. Apache figures emerged from the snow, led by a stout woman with a painted face. I am Nita, Tala's sister, she said, her voice cautious. We saw the blizzard. Outlaws hunt you. She offered a water skin, her eyes on Ayla and Nia. You're alive, sisters. We thought you lost. Ayla ran to her, tears in her eyes. Gideon saved us. Nita nodded, offering Gideon a feathered cord. You're kin now, Tracker. The reunion was brief but heartfelt. Nita's warriors, 15 strong, joined them, their spears glinting. The Tracker Vance is near, Nita warned. He plans an attack at dawn. Gideon's heart steadied, his bond with the tribe a shield. We'll be ready, he said. Kale's hand found his trust a beacon. Father, he murmured. The word warmed Gideon, a redemption he hadn't sought. The peace shattered as the first light crept over the peaks. Hoofbeats echoed Vance and 12 riders, their rifles ready, their intent clear in the pre-dawn gloom. Nita's men melted into the snowdrifts, leaving Gideon and the tribe exposed on the ridge. Hold, Nita whispered, but Gideon stood firm, his rifle raised, the weight of the warning settling in. Vance's voice cut through the cold. Give up the sisters, Holt, or die. Gideon fired, his shot grazing a rider, but an arrow struck Nita's leg, drawing a cry. Ayla shielded her, her pouch a talisman, while Kono's spear felled too, forcing Vance to retreat momentarily. They bandaged Nita's leg, Gideon's hands gentle. You're all my family now, he said. Nita's eyes met his, a warmth breaking through. And you're ours. The mountains tested them, their icy trials forging a bond. But the outlaws' attack loomed larger, a storm they'd faced together. Frost Hollow was near, but so was their reckoning. Frost Hollow rose like a frozen scar across the Arizona mountains, its treacherous pass of icy cliffs and snow-dusted ravines standing defiant against the encroaching dusk. The sun dipped low, casting a fiery glow across the hollow's rim, the air thick with the scent of frost-bitten stone and the faint promise of a cooling night breeze following the day's relentless cold. Gideon Holt, Ayla, Nia, Kale, and the Apache kin led by Tala prepared for their stand, the tension palpable in the stillness, heightened by the looming threat of the outlaws' attack. Gideon's weathered coat was torn at the hem, his boots caked with snow and blood from his grazed shoulder, his axe and rifle poised despite the ache in his muscles. His face, rugged with a scar across his cheek, bore a grim determination, his hazel eyes shadowed by the weight of his past solitude. Ayla, the elder sister in her mid-20s, stood beside him, her mended dress fluttering beneath a borrowed shawl, her arm wound bandaged, her dark eyes resolute with survival. Nia, the younger sister, flanked her, her dress patched and torn, her hands cradling Kale, the 2-year-old boy, his tattered blanket pressed against his chest, his pale face showing signs of courage. Tala trailed them, his buckskin attire adorned with faded beads, his arm wound bandaged, his hands wielding a spear, his presence a steady guardian, flanked by 3 Apache warriors, their faces painted with earth tones, their weapons and horses poised for battle. The journey to this refuge had forged their bond, now tested by the outlaws' relentless pursuit. The hollow offered strategic ground, steep drops for ambushes, rocky outcrops for cover, and a narrow pass for traps. Gideon fortified a vantage point with Tala's men, his hands calloused from years of tracking, now skilled in war. Ayla rigged tripwires with sinew, her movements precise despite her exhaustion, her pouch a constant reminder of their burden. The warriors assisted, stacking stones with Kono, their vigilance unwavering. The outlaws want the pouch, Tala said, his voice low and strained. They'll kill us for it. Gideon nodded, his guilt over past isolation fueling his resolve. "We hold them here," he replied. Kono handed him a sharpened stake, a silent pledge of unity. The weapons weighed a comfort in his hands. Nita distributed spears and arrows, her warriors blending into the hollow's shadows, their movements silent and deadly. "Vance leads them," she warned. "The attack is imminent." Gideon's heart steadied, his bond with the tribe a shield against the encroaching dark. "We fight as family," he said. Kale's small hand found his, a flicker of trust breaking through his fear. "Father," he murmured, a word that warmed Gideon's soul. The sentiment lingered, a redemption he hadn't dared hope for, as the wind carried the distant sound of approaching hooves, the conflict, now a reality. As dusk deepened, the air grew taut with anticipation, the hollow silence broken by the crunch of boots on snow. The outlaws rode in with 15 men, Vance at their side, the tracker's scar-faced grin, a harbinger of violence. Their leader, a broad man in a black duster lined with stolen pelts, dismounted and called out, his voice a thunderclap against the cliffs. "Holt, hand over the sisters and that pouch, or this hollow becomes your icy tomb." Gideon stepped forward, his rifle raised, his voice firm despite the cold. "You'll have to take them over my dead body," he shouted, his breath visible in the frigid air. The clash erupted like a mountain tempest. The outlaws charged, their rifles and revolvers spitting fire through the dusk. Gideon's first shot dropped a rider, the bullet finding its mark with a precision honed by survival. Tala's warriors struck from the shadows, their spears felling 2 more, their movements silent and deadly. Ayla triggered a tripwire, a dynamite cache salvaged from an old settler's stash exploding and sending a shower of snow and rock, scattering the attackers. But the outlaws' numbers were overwhelming, and Vance's rifle was a relentless predator, his bullet grazing Gideon's arm, drawing a sharp hiss of pain. Nita pulled him behind a snowbank, her leg wound seeping anew. "Stay alive," she growled, loosing an arrow that struck a man's chest, her aim unwavering despite her fatigue. The hollow became a battlefield, its echoes ringing with gunfire and the thud of falling bodies. Gideon fired again, dropping another rider, the cold numbing his hands but not his resolve. Tala's warriors fought with primal fury, their spears piercing the fray, while Kono and the warriors lobbed rocks, their forms a surprising force against the icy terrain. But the outlaw leader's voice cut through the chaos. "Nia, give me the pouch's secret, or they all die." He held a pistol to Tala's head, the warrior's spear shattered, his eyes defiant. Nia's heart sank, her pouch clutched tight. "No," she cried, her voice raw with emotion. Gideon's mind raced, he couldn't lose another family. He signaled Tala's men to hold, his gaze locking with Nia's, a silent plea for a plan. Nia stepped forward, her stance defiant despite her wounds. "They betrayed our tribe," she shouted, her voice carrying over the wind. "They sold our people to traders, enslaved us when we fought." The revelation hit Gideon like a thunderclap. The outlaw's greed wasn't just for the pouch, but for the sacred rights it guarded, a secret her tribe had protected. The leader laughed, his pistol steady. "Then you all die with your defiance." But Nia moved, shoving Gideon, Ayla, Kale, and Rose aside as Vance fired, the bullet tearing through her chest. She fell, blood staining the snow, her pouch slipping from her grasp. "Gideon, no!" he roared, lunging to Nia's side, his hands trembling as he pressed against the wound. Tala's warriors charged, their spears a blur, felling 3 men in a surge of vengeance. Kono struck with a rock, stunning a rider, while Ayla's arrow found another's leg. Gideon tackled Vance, their struggle a tangle of fists and ice, until his axe crushed the tracker's skull, ending the threat. The outlaw leader roared, charging with his pistol, but Tala's spear pierced his side, bringing him down. The remaining outlaws fled, their horses vanishing into the dusk. Gideon knelt beside Nia, his hands stained with her blood, his heart breaking as he tried to stem the flow. "Hold on," he pleaded, his voice cracking with emotion. Her eyes met his, a faint smile breaking through the pain. "You're my brother now," she rasped. "Protect them. The pouch is our future." Her hand fell, her spirit slipping into the mountain's icy embrace, her sacrifice a final act of trust. Ayla bound the leader, her men finishing the fight, the hollow falling silent, save for the wind's mournful wail. The outlaws were defeated, their men scattered, But Nia's loss was a wound deeper than the cold. Gideon cradled her, tears freezing on his cheeks, the weight of her words sinking in. Kael, Isla, Tala, and the warriors approached, placing the pouch, a woven mat, and herbs on her chest. "She was our mother," Kael said, his small voice thick. "Now she's with our ancestors." The Apache carried her to a pyre, their chants rising, a tribute to her courage that echoed through the hollow. Gideon stood, his guilt eased by her forgiveness, his promise to protect Kael and the others a new purpose. The hollow smoldered, the air heavy with loss and victory. Nita offered Gideon a place with the tribe, and he nodded. "I'll honor her at the village," he said, his voice steady. The journey to Frost Hollow had broken the outlaw's grip, but Nia's sacrifice would resonate in the mountain silence. Gideon's redemption was hers, and the pouch her people's legacy would remain guarded. The dawn broke over Frost Hollow, a fragile light spilling across the snow-dusted peaks, where the embers of Nia's pyre glowed like the last whispers of a fading hope. The air was thick with the lingering scent of smoke and the crisp, pine-scented chill of the mountains, the vast Arizona landscape reclaiming the battlefield with a quiet, unyielding peace. Gideon Holt stood at the hollow's edge, his weathered coat torn and dusted with ash, his boots planted firmly in the snow, his axe and rifle resting against a boulder. His face, rugged with a scar across his cheek, bore the weight of grief, his hazel eyes glistening with unshed tears, the guilt of his past solitude softened by Nia's final words. The woven pouch with the tribal secrets, Nia's strange reward, hung around his neck on a cord, a symbol of the kinship that had brought him to this moment. The outlaw leader, bound and defeated, slumped against a rock, his claim to power shattered, his greed no match for the courage of a tracker and his adopted tribe. Kael, the 2-year-old boy, clung to Gideon's leg, his tattered blanket pressed against his chest, his pale face reflecting a mix of sorrow and newfound strength. Ayla, the elder sister, stood nearby, her face etched with both loss and pride, the hope of their legacy burning bright. Tala, Nita, Kono, and the Apache warriors gathered around, their painted faces mirroring the resilience of the mountains. The Apache warriors, led by Tala, moved with a solemn reverence, their faces reflecting the hollow's rugged hues as they gathered around Nia's pyre. The flames had dwindled to a gentle glow. The snow around it melted into a ring of dark earth, a testament to her sacrifice. Tala knelt, offering a prayer in Apache, his voice a deep chant that reverberated through the cliffs, honoring a sister who had transcended her role as protector and mother. Gideon watched, his hands trembling as he placed Nia's shawl once her shield onto the pyre, a silent vow to carry her legacy forward. Kael, Isla, Nita, and the warriors joined him, adding the pouch, a woven mat, and a bundle of herbs, their offerings a tribute to her courage. "She saved us," Kael said, his small voice thick with emotion. "You kept her promise." Gideon nodded, the words a balm to his wounded soul, a redemption he hadn't dared to claim. The journey to the hidden tribal valley began, the warriors carrying the pyre's remnants through the hollow's snowy pass, its ashes a sacred burden. The path was treacherous, the ice cracking underfoot, the cold of the night giving way to a warming breeze that carried the promise of renewal. Gideon walked with them, his shoulder aching from the graze but his spirit lifted by their unity. The valley emerged a sheltered expanse nestled between towering peaks, its floor dotted with fir trees and a faint shimmer of a spring fed by an underground stream. The Apache survivors greeted them, their faces etched with grief for Nia but warmth for her savior. Nita led Gideon to the spring, its waters clear and life-giving, reflecting the cavern walls adorned with painted symbols and woven mats, a sanctuary Nia had died to protect. "Her spirit guards this place," Nita said. "You are kin." The tribe gathered around a fire that night, the valley's walls amplifying their voices as they shared tales of Nia's bravery. Her gifts to Gideon, her trust, the pouch were now symbols of her legacy, their weight heavier than the sacred rites they held. They offered him a place among them, their eyes reflecting gratitude and hope. "You fought for her," Kono said, handing him a woven mat. "Stay, and find peace." Gideon hesitated, his mind drifting to his past, a tracker broken by war and loss, his brother's death a guilt he'd carried like a stone. Naya's words, "You're my brother," echoed, her sacrifice a key to unlock that prison. "I'll stay," he said finally, "but I'll bring my skills to your valley. With your help." The days that followed were a blend of mourning and rebuilding. The Apache taught Gideon their ways: how to channel the spring's water for crops, how to weave mats from mountain grasses, how to honor their rights with herbs by the fire. Kale became his shadow, the boy's small hands learning alongside Gideon's, his laughter a rare sound that softened the edges of his grief. Ayla, guided by Tala, took to organizing the valley's defenses, her resilience turning into leadership. They constructed a small log cabin near the spring, its walls rising under their hands, a fusion of Apache strength and Gideon's tracking skills. The mountains, once a place of solitude, became a bridge between worlds, their silence broken by the tribe's songs and the trickle of water, a stark contrast to the hollow quiet he'd known. One evening, as the sun set, painting the valley in shades of orange and purple, Gideon stood at the spring's edge, the woven pouch a constant reminder. Kael and the tribal children joined him, holding a new pouch and a carved axe crafted by the tribe. "For us?" Kael asked. Gideon nodded, his eyes misting as he handed them out. "Your mother would want you to have them," he said. Kael smiled, a rare light in his young face. "She gave us a home." The sentiment lingered, a bond forged in the crucible of the mountains, strengthened by the promise of a shared sanctuary. The tribe celebrated with a feast, their songs filling the valley, Nia's name woven into the melodies. Gideon learned her story in full: how she'd fled her tribe's exile to protect Kael, how she'd hidden the pouch to save their secrets, how her spirit now watched over them. His past, his failure to save his brother, his years of isolation faded against her forgiveness. He wasn't just a tracker anymore, but a guardian, a father to those he'd once failed. Nita approached, offering a carved wooden flute. "Lead with her strength," she said. Gideon took it, his hand steady. "I will." Weeks later, the valley thrived, its spring nourishing new crops, its people strengthened by Gideon's aid. The tribe, true to their bond, began the journey back to Thunder Pass, bringing materials and hands to rebuild Gideon's cabin, transforming the ruins into a symbol of renewal. He rebuilt his life, the tribe's help a lifeline, their stories a balm to his loneliness. Nia's shawl hung above the new cabin's door, a shrine to her sacrifice, its fabric a silent witness. The mountains stretched vast, their snow-capped peaks a testament to their fight, but they were no longer a place of solitude. Gideon's redemption was complete, not in solitude, but in the family he'd found: Kael, Ayla, Tala, Nita, Kono, the tribe all bound by Nia's legacy. As the sun rose over Frost Hollow, its golden light bathed the valley and the distant silhouette of the reborn cabin, a promise of a new beginning. Gideon stood at the cabin's threshold, the wooden flute at his side, the woven pouch gleaming. He was no longer just a lone tracker who'd offered freedom, but a father to a boy, and a brother to a sister whose mother's courage had saved him, whose pouch had turned peril into a legacy of hope. The mountains whispered her name, and Gideon carried it forward, a shared sanctuary born from the ashes of sacrifice, with the promise of a rebuilt home anchoring their new family.